Welcome to the Otahuhu third platform and loop project specific induction. Kiwi Rail is delivering these works for City Rail Link Limited as one of several wider network improvements that are needed to enable the new City Rail tunnel to operate effectively. This induction provides you with key health, safety and environmental requirements for working at the Otahuhu project. The objective of the Otahuhu works will be to provide Auckland Transport with better timetabling options for trains based on additional capacity for public transport services. This will also enable growth for Kiwi Rail freight services departing Auckland. The work involves the new eastern side platform being brought into use. Work will extend from Kaka Street to the old Westfield platform, including the installation of 4 new crossovers. The formation under the railway lane overbridge will need to be lowered to accommodate the railway track and overhead traction lines. Underground service including cabling and drainage will need to be relocated. Signalling and traction overhead changes are also required. The current platform is operated as an island platform between the NIMT up and down lanes. The station has also been configured to support a bus network from Walmsley Road, and a large concourse has recently been added to allow access to the platform from Titi Street. Auckland Transport will also be building several structures at the Otahuhu platform. The upgrade work will commence in March 2019 and is programmed to be completed in February 2020. This section of track will be a challenging section to work on, with public train services running at 10 to 15 minute intervals and up to 30 scheduled freight movements per day. The freight movements are not always on time due to a number of uncontrolled factors, so it's important you have the right controls in place to protect you before you begin work. Access to the site can either be made from the station itself or alternatively Portage Road, where it's most likely heavy machinery will enter. Where possible, work will be done behind approved barriers or vortex fencing. The more intrusive works will be scheduled for partial network closures, where passenger services are replaced by bus and freight trains rerouted or scheduled outside worksite hours. This upgrade is quite complex, with several activities and hazards to contend with, such as passenger and freight services, 25 kV overhead traction, and multiple underground services. However, a plus for this project is that this is not a residential area and consists of mainly an industrial makeup. This gives the opportunity to also work with relative ease at night, or when some loud activities may disrupt some people. Remember, this does not give an excuse to be disrespectful, and measures should always be put in place to reduce noise. Successful delivery of this project means there are no safety or environmental incidents or injuries to personnel throughout the work. Please pay attention to this induction. There will be a short test at the end you need to complete. Zero harm. Kiwi Rail is committed to zero harm to staff, contractors and the environment. It's an expectation that everyone working on this project shares this commitment. Success means that everyone returns home uninjured after every shift. Everyone needs to work together, communicate effectively and know their responsibilities. A safe environment means that the workplace is tidy and there are facilities to ensure the safety of all people on site. Report all incidents and any concerns, unsafe acts or hazards to your supervisor immediately. Comply with all rules and procedures as they are there to keep you safe. Fit for work means that you're free from the effects of drugs and alcohol, and you're not tired or fatigued that could cause you to lose concentration and have an incident. Only operate tools, machinery or plant that you are trained or licensed to use. STAR. Sometimes things can change during a shift, and it could be a change in a job you're doing or starting a new task. When this happens, Kiwi Rail has a simple process to help you review your safety. The process is called STAR or STAR. The STAR process gets you to stop, think, act, and review before undertaking a task. The STAR process works like this. Stop before starting a task to consider the risks. Think about what can go wrong. How can I make this task safer? Is there a safer means of doing the work using alternative methods? For example, can I use a digger to lift the heavy bundle of material rather than lifting it by manual handling? Once you are sure the task can be done safely, proceed. Do not proceed if you feel it is unsafe and discuss it with your supervisor. PPE, Personal protective equipment is the last line of defense from being injured. The minimum PPE or PPC for working on this project is elbow to ankle body cover clothing to be worn on site. A hard hat, preferably white, avoid red or green colours as they are not permitted on railway work sites. Eye protection to be worn at all times on the work site. Consider having clear safety glasses for night work and where there is low light. Orange high visibility clothing with reflective stripes worn at all times so you can be seen. Steel capped lace up safety boots. Make sure these are fully laced to help avoid twisted ankles from uneven surfaces on the worksite. Other PPE may be required depending on the task you are undertaking. Make sure you have sunscreen, especially as summer is approaching. It is a requirement within KiwiRail that all people who operate mobile plant or vehicles be deemed competent and are authorised. No worker is to operate equipment or instruct another person to operate equipment unless they have been authorised in writing as competent to do so. To keep everyone safe, there are site rules for this project, which are: smoke only in the designated areas, no verbal abuse or offensive language, no animals on site, parking in designated area only. KiwiRail has a fitness for work policy. This means you are expected to arrive at work in a fit and healthy state that does not put you or other workers at risk. KiwiRail is a drug and alcohol-free workplace, which means you must not be affected by drugs and alcohol. No storage or consumption of alcohol or drugs on site. Random drug and alcohol testing applies to everyone on this project. Tell your supervisor if you are on medication that may affect your safety or concentration. KiwiRail fatigue management guidelines require the work shift to be planned to be no greater than 12 hours. 14 hours is the absolute maximum length of shift, however this requires approval from the KiwiRail project manager. Fatigue is a risk on this project as there will be day and night works along with extended work periods during the block of line. To help avoid fatigue, plan to get at least 8 hours sleep between shifts. Take regular breaks and drink water to keep you hydrated throughout the shift. Avoid excessive alcohol. Avoid coffee or caffeine before going to sleep. Ask your family and neighbours to be quiet if you are sleeping during the day. Use a fan to help keep your bedroom cooler when sleeping. If you are feeling fatigued, tell your supervisor before starting the shift. Risks and hazards. A hazard is something that, if not controlled, could cause harm to people, the environment, or equipment. Hazards and risks that are part of your work must be identified, assessed, and controlled. Doing nothing is not an option. Everyone on site must be aware of the hazards. If you note a hazard on site, inform your supervisor immediately, and if you can, take steps to remove the hazard or reduce the risk. People and plant interface and track occupancy. Exclusion zones are established to keep people away from potential sources of harm or to make people aware that they are entering a hazardous work environment. No person is to enter a restricted area, no-go zone, go through a barricade or delineated area unless authorised by the person or persons responsible for that area. Positive communication allows persons working near each other to coordinate their tasks and ensure they have heard and understood each other and they are authorised or safe to undertake their intended action. When you're controlling a hazard, you should always try to eliminate the risk. If elimination is not possible, you must minimise the risk of the hazard. As an example, take a hole in the ground. It might be there because of the work you're doing, or it's identified on the worksite. Either way, it's a hazard because someone might fall or trip into it. After identifying this as a hazard, you must now control the hazard. The best thing you could do is fill it in or cover it so there's no hole. This is the safest option as the hazard has been eliminated. However, this may not be possible as the hole may need to be left open. If this is the case, the hazard must be minimised by fencing the hole or at the very least warning people of the hazard. Controls of energy. Never tamper with, modify or remove safety devices. Safety devices such as alarms, emergency stops, lockouts, barriers, guards, signage and PPE are there for a reason. Always ensure cables have been located before you break ground. Ensure this has been planned well before the work commences. Site-specific hazards. On this project, there are some site-specific hazards you need to note. Trains will be operating during the day, and on average there will be a train every 5 to 10 minutes, unless there is a block of line or you are working at night. Most of the trains are electric, so they are very quiet and you may not hear them approaching. They are also carrying up to 1,000 passengers at peak times. Because trains run on rails, they cannot swerve to avoid you and they can't stop quickly like a truck or a car. Trains are very heavy and collisions with trains are usually fatal or lead to very serious permanent injuries. The use of headphones or earphones is prohibited on site as they block the ability to hear trains approaching. If you need to take a phone call, only use phones in safe areas away from the railway and operating plant and machinery. Most of the day work will be behind fences with the railway operational and trains passing. A safety fence will be set up to separate the worksite from the live railway. It's important that nothing crosses over the fence line towards the railway. This includes machinery and plant. In this area, trains can operate in either direction at any time on the track. During night work and on block of lines, the train services will be suspended and you will be authorised to access the railway to complete work. The Rail Protection Officer or Site Protector is the only person who can authorise you to access the track, and you will be required to lock on with a padlock before accessing within 4 metres of the railway. Other hazards on site include the 25,000 volt AC overhead power lines above the railway to power the trains. This system is called overhead electrification, and because it is always live, no machinery can encroach within 4 metres of any lines. Contacting these overhead lines could result in death through electrocution or very serious burns. You will need KiwiRail electrification awareness training in addition to this induction to work on the site. For some of the work activity on the track or within 4 metres of the overhead lines, the power can be turned off or isolated. A permit is issued by KiwiRail called an EF201 that certifies the power is isolated and lines earthed. No work can be undertaken which might get close to the overhead lines unless there is an EF201 permit in place. Your supervisor will provide you with details of any power isolations in the pre-start briefing. Underfoot conditions are a hazard on work sites. Watch for any uneven surfaces and keep your boots laced up. In the absence of an enclosed work area, persons required to work at heights must ensure appropriate fall protection controls have been installed. There are lots of underground services in the railway corridor. These must be located prior to breaking ground and permits to dig issued. Beware of machinery on site. Keep out of swing areas and operator blind spots. Get permission from the operator before entering a swing area of an operating machine. Pre-start. Each team working on the project must start the shift with a pre-start safety briefing, which includes everyone in your team. Items to cover at your briefing include the job details. Is this the safest way to do this task? Is there a safer way? Are there any new or unusual hazards? Checking that everyone has the right PPE to work safely. That emergency procedures have been communicated. Any new or inexperienced staff are sufficiently supervised. Are any permits to work required, such as overhead electrification permit? Remember to review and rebrief the team if the work changes. Take time to do a thorough pre-start because no job is so urgent that we don't have time to do it safely. Site emergency procedures will be covered at the pre-start briefings and on notice boards on site. Make sure that you're familiar with the procedures. Check that you know where to find the first aid kit and the kit is adequately stocked. If you use the first aid kit, report this to your supervisor so it can be refilled, and if you've suffered an injury, advise your supervisor and complete an incident form. Fire extinguishers are also available on site. Make sure you know where they're located. Ensure that you park in the allocated car park and don't block any adjacent roads or driveways. When working at night, keep noise to a minimum. Plan work that will create a lot of noise for during the day or blocks of line. Be respectful of the neighbours, and if there are any complaints, refer them immediately to your supervisor and KiwiRail to respond. Be aware of dust created. Dust is both a health hazard to workers and a nuisance to neighbours. Always look to reduce dust as much as possible by means such as wetting down the work area. Protect drains and waterways from pollution caused by the work. Install silt controls and make sure you have bunging around any hazardous liquids stored on site. Make sure you have spill kits available and the right PPE to deal with the spilled material. If you do have a spill, promptly clean it up so it doesn't run into drains and report it as an incident. Do not refuel plant or equipment next to drains wherever possible. Incident reporting. If you have an incident or accident on site, you must report this to your supervisor immediately. Report all incidents, including close calls, to allow for prevention measures to be put in place to prevent more serious incidents and injuries. This also includes environmental incidents, where something has spilled. Reporting the small stuff helps prevent the big stuff. If you have any questions or you're not sure, ask your supervisor for advice. Never assume anything. You will receive an induction sticker for your hard hat. This must be displayed on site to confirm you have received the induction. Thanks for paying attention to this presentation. Everyone is responsible for safety on this project, so get involved and do your part. You can now complete the questionnaire.